the brick will not be redeemable into gold. And maybe there's a dealer somewhere. We'll take it that's between you and the dealer.
In this interview, Jim Rickards discusses the potential implications of the BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, creating a new currency backed by gold. He explains that this currency, referred to as BRIC for convenience, is not pegged to any other currency but is determined by the weight of gold. Rickards emphasizes that the value of the BRIC is stable as long as the price of gold remains constant, but it is not redeemable into gold. He argues that the BRICS want the dollar and the dollar gold market to exist because they benefit from the stability of gold while allowing the dollar to do the dirty work in the gold space. Rickards suggests that this move is a bet on the long-term collapse of the dollar against gold. Rickards credits Russia for this concept and discusses how recent geopolitical events, such as the freezing of Russian assets by the US in response to the conflict in Ukraine, have led countries to reconsider the security of holding reserves in US dollars. He explains that this distrust in the dollar's stability has accelerated the BRICS' efforts to establish their own currency system backed by gold. Overall, Rickards views the creation of the BRIC as a significant development in international finance, potentially challenging the dominance of the US dollar and reshaping the global monetary landscape.
One of the things you could do is buy gold. That what happens when the United States buys gold, the dollar price of gold goes up, and the BRIC gets stronger, and the dollar gets weaker. So now back to the BRICS. They replicated the World Bank. They replicated the IMF. Now they're coming out with a new currency works currency. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. And I tell people, I said, if you want to understand this, it took me a long time to figure this out. And I was just like slaving over. But I said, if you want to understand this, you have to stop thinking like an American. You have to start thinking like a Russian. This is the kind of thing that pretty much only Russia could come up with. So what is the BRICS currency can, by the way? I don't know if they're going to call it a BRIC. I'm saying BRIC for convenience. It doesn't matter what they call it, but I just call it a BRIC, but for the time being. But they'll come up with a name. Who knows the value of the BRIC is not determined with reference to any other currency. It's determined with reference to gold by weight of gold. I don't know the way they'll pick one, but again, it doesn't matter because now we're back to Aristotle's transitive law. This is the key. This unlocks the whole thing because Aristotle said, if A equals B equals C, then A equals C. The B can drop out. It's not even arithmetic. It's logic. It's called the transitive life. I'm certain that Aristotle invented. If any Greek scholars know under other sorts, let me know. So what the BRICS have done is they have dodged the biggest bullet. The thing that causes Bretton was ultimately to fail the thing that potentially stands in the way of all this. They've defined their currency by weight of gold. Now, a weight of gold has $1 value, right? So A equals B equals C, one bracket equals 1 could be an answer. Kilo doesn't matter. You call it an ounce. 1 brick equals 1 ounce of gold equals, today, 1970. Well, through the transitive law, it dropped out to be 1 brick equals 1970, $1,970. But that's constant. I mean, that logic works at a moment in time, but it's not fixed because the price of gold is going to fluctuate daily, minute by minute, right? So what's going to happen is the dollar gold coin exchange rate, the dollar price of gold. So the LBMA, the COMEX, the London Metals Exchange, JP Morgan on allocated forward contracts, the whole huge gold market in dollars is still going to exist. In fact, of the BRICS wanted to exist. And if I could just digress for 1 minute, I've never seen an international monetary economic problem that has created more confusion. I won't say misinformation. I still try for just confusion, or maybe deliberate hyperbole than this. Because let me tell you what this is not, I'm going to tell you what it is. But it's important to know what it's not. This is not the Petro Yuan. This is not the Petro Ruble. This is not a gold-backed yuan. This is not a gold standard. This is not the end of the US dollar. It's not the end of the euro. It's not the end of the world. It's not any of those things. But that's what everyone's running around on websites or whatever shouting. It's none of those things. In fact, quite the opposite. And this is the Russian mentality comes in. The BRICS want the dollar to be around. They want the dollar gold market to exist because they get the free ride. The dollar has to do all the dirty work in the gold space. And BRICS get their free ride. By declaring 1 break equal to a weight of gold again, weight's the key. They slip the dollar gold market go wherever it goes. And the BRIC is worth an answer. Whatever kilo, whatever. And yeah, the dollar equivalent under the trends of law changes, but they're not pegged to the dollar. They're not fighting that fight. In other words, the BRICS get to free ride on the dollar gold system, and they want that system. They don't want it to go away because they get the benefit of a gold value. I think what the BRICS don't have to do in the scenario, they don't have to buy gold. They don't even have to own gold, they do. But no one in the world has enough gold to back a currency. This currency, the BRIC, will not be redeemable into gold. And maybe there's a dealer somewhere. We'll take it that's between you and the dealer. But it's something you're going to be able to march down to the People's Bank of China with a pile of bricks and say, give me the gold. They're not going to do it. So it's not redeemable. They're not going to make a market. They're not going to maintain a value because they don't have to, because it's by weight. They just get to sit back and piggyback on the dollar gold system. Let the dollar do all the dirty work with one twist. And that's it. Here's the Russian contribution I see. You'd have to close your capital account. Close it, open it, whatever you have to buy gold, you have to make a market. You no longer need that much gold. You just say this is the ultimate fiat currency, or fiat, and that means I say so. Well, they say so, and they're just basically, this is a bet that the dollar is going to collapse against gold over time. I think that's a very good bet. This is not a 3-month forecast. I'm not saying gold's going to go up or down the next week. Who knows? But over time, now we're into what debt to GDP ratios, annual deficits, dare I say modern monetary theory, and all these ideas are ruining the dollar, and everyone can see it, but not yet. And so if you want to launch this new currency and you say, hey, long term, the dollar is going to collapse in terms of gold, I'll hook my horse to this wagon called gold by weight, and I'll just reap the benefits, and I don't have to do a thing. And so that you're defining it by weight. So the dollar gold market goes where it goes, but you don't really have to worry about it, because you're anchored to weight. But here's the twist. And this is how it's going to play out. Now you're the United States. You're like, looks like I've been painted into a corner. What can I do? Well, one of the things you could do, I've told the treasurer this for years, and I'll listen. I mean, they invite me to help listen. One of the things you could do is buy gold. But what happens when the United States buys gold? The dollar price of gold goes up, and the BRIC gets stronger, and the dollar gets weaker. Checkmate. In other words, the US is now in a box where you can't even get out of it by buying gold, because you're going to weaken your own currency relative to gold in the process. And the BRICS are just going to sit there and not lift a finger. So it's genius. I got to credit the Russians. I'm not saying the Chinese couldn't think of something like this, but this has got Russia's fingerprints all over it. Okay, people have been talking about this for 20 years. You know, the Great Reset, the end of the dollar, or the collapse of the dollar gold to the moon. And it's never played out. And the reason are some of the ones, which is the dollar has these huge embedded advantages in the form of its reserve currency status. Not because everyone loves the dollar or they even love the United States, but because we have the only bond market big enough to absorb global savings.